Gwilym, how are you, mate?
I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, no, really good. I've just got back from Poland, where it was very, very cold, but yeah, it was the meeting of our European sibling organisations. So that's patent attorney representative bodies around Europe. We have two of these a year, one in the autumn and one in the spring. This was the autumn one in Poland, where yeah, it was quite chilly, but we had a really good meeting, I have to say. So we do a full day's work. We do sort of like a 10 till 5 meeting, which is a long old slog where we cover a lot of ground. It's patents and trademarks and all other IP rights. And then we always get some kind of like amazing social experience. They took us down a salt mine. So I can't pronounce the name of the salt mine, but they took us down a salt mine, which was an experience in and of itself going down. Amazing, absolutely amazing. If you're ever in Krakow and you want a sort of really good day out, salt mines highly recommended. And then down the bottom, they gave us a gala dinner. So we're in the depths of this salt mine, eating fabulous food, drinking quite a lot of vodka, and being very grateful that we were being shoved into a miner's lift to get back up again, rather than having to go up the 900 odd steps that we had to walk down.
And presumably no shortage of condiments down there, Lee.
No, there was plenty of salt,
Loads of salt,
tonnage of salt, and you are encouraged to like lick the walls on the way down. And you're told, don't worry, it doesn't matter how many people have done it, because salt is a kind of naturally kills bacteria. So obviously I did do it, but there's also this little underground salt lake, and I had to have a little taste of that. Yeah, that was quite salty.
That's quite salty. Well, I imagine it was. You licked the walls on the way down.
Why wouldn't you?
Well, did you lick the lift on the way up?
No, that's not the same experience, is it? Because that's had people's sort of horrible hands and things all over it. I guess the walls have too. But...
And so what's it like being down the mine? I think because you messaged me about this, I think, are we not both from mining stock, or did I make that up?
You've made that up. Yeah.
I am.
You are, yeah, I know you are, but no, I'm not. I have no idea. My Welsh side of the family is entirely mad.
My granddad was a miner. I'm built to be in a mine because my legs are really short.
Oh, you went really fast then. Your audio went really kind of gallopy.
I had a lot to say. My internet connection is unstable. We're going to be fine. No, I just got excitable, Lee. That's what it was.
Lee Davis and Gwilym Roberts are the two IPs in a pod, and you are listening to a podcast on intellectual property, brought to you by the Chartered Institute of Patent Attorneys.
Should we crack on with a podcast?
Go on then.
Exciting one today, because it's one that we've promoted before, in part of a triumvirate thing that we were doing around charities that would be good for patent attorney firms and individuals to support, and now we're revisiting that, but just with one of the charities back on the Access project. We've got Jess on. Hi, Jess. How are you?
Hello, everyone. Hi, Lee. Hi, Gwilym. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, it's fabulous to have you on. Do you want to tell us a wee bit about? Give yourself a big build-up. Give yourself the grand introduction.
Oh, I will try my best. I was trying to think of how grand I could go, but I'm the head of volunteer recruitment at the Access Project. So what that means is I go around trying to find amazing people who'd be willing to give a bit of their time to tutor young people at GCSE. I don't know if there's much more interesting things to say about myself, other than I've been doing it for 6 months, covering for a wonderful guy called Harry Hodges, currently on paternity leave, enjoying his first child at the moment. So if we come back again, you might hear a very different voice, but someone who is equally as keen to work with your wonderful listeners to see if they are interested in giving up some of their time.
Yeah, we're going to talk a fair bit about that, I think. Do you want to start off by just giving us sort of the overview of the Access project, what it's there to do?
Absolutely. So the Access Project has been around for about 15 years. In fact, we celebrated our 15-year anniversary in October. So it's amazing, I think, for a charity to be around that long. But it shows that we're needed more than ever. As an organisation, our vision is to help every young person, regardless of their background, to make the most of their education and unlock their potential to create a fairer society. Our mission is to support students who are largely from disadvantaged backgrounds. 91% of the young people that we work with are from disadvantaged backgrounds, to access top universities. We have a unique combination of tuition and in-school mentoring to help them create good applications, essentially, to go to university, but also to get the grades and transition to higher education with the support of their tutor and with our university access officers in-house.
Cool. And Gwilym, I know this is something that you've got an interest in. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your involvement?
Yeah, so there's a colleague here, Scott, actually was doing it, and he put something out on that intranet, and it just happened to chime with something that I think we as pattern attorneys are very well placed to do, which is to give not a massive amount of time, an hour a week, tutoring on science, which of course, not only are we all scientists as patent attorneys kind of by definition, but actually we keep our hands in because of our jobs. So we're not kind of really lapsed scientists, we're actually all over it. And it caught my attention partly because I thought, well, I can do that, but partly also because it does kind of pick one of the boxes that we're forever agonizing over, which is the EDI point about how do we broaden the intake into the profession when the STEM candidates do not come from that diverse a background in some instances. Yeah. And this seemed like a really good way of starting a tiny little bit of the solution to the problem at source by saying, well, hang on, we can actually, because people say, well, we're stuck with the STEM candidates we get. That's not quite right. We can actually make a difference. So this just seemed to tick so many boxes. I thought I'd give it a go. And yeah, I'm not often passionate about things, but I just see the logic in this.
I could ask you loads of questions, Gwilym, but that's not fair because it's Jess's podcast. So I'll ask him of Jess instead, because there's lots of things going through my mind at the moment. How do you identify young people, Jess? How do you?
So there's quite a few different ways, but we specifically work with schools, and we work with 40 of them now across the UK, which includes West Yorkshire, East Midlands, West Midlands, and London. Basically working with the schools in areas of what we would call higher deprivation.
Yeah.
And focusing in on the students 20 at GCSE and 20 at A level, who have identified that they need a bit of support to be able to get the grades they want to get, to go into further education, or as Gwilym said, to kind of raise their aspirations. These young people have been focused in on because they fit a lot of the criterion categories that we think is really, really key to expand the workforce and to make them more diverse, as Gwilym mentioned. So they're young people who are on free school meals, have some form of pupil premium and support from the government. And also we have a small percentage, 1% of students who are receiving care or in care. So these young people on the whole, who, as I said, 91% of them would not get the level of support that's provided to them outside of the Access Project. So they're really young people who have put themselves forward as well. There's what we call self-selected. They're young people who want to be able to be there. They're really keen, which is really, great to see. 98% of our students in our last impact report would recommend us. So you can really see that they're really keen to work with us and get those grades. So it's a mixture of their own desire alongside working with schools that have been particularly focused in on.
And what does the volunteering actually look like? I'm assuming it's one-to-one.
It is. So it's online, and Gwilym, I'm sure, can fill in all the details around what it actually looks like and how
I don't want to ask Gwilym because he talks too much on the podcast. So
it's great to hear that real life experience. But yes, it's online. We have our own specific platform, which, of course, when you're dealing with young people 15, 16, 17, it's important we have that safeguarding in mind. So it's online. You're given lots of help from both the teacher of the young person as well as from the Access Project itself to be able to set up lesson plans and really think about what do you want to tutor, what topics the young person needs to cover. And we give you that kind of roundabout support to be able to do that. It's an hour a week, as we've already mentioned, and you can do half an hour of prep time before that. Gwilym, do you want to go in a bit of detail of what it actually feels like and looks like when you're in that space?
You've got a guest asking you a question. This is against the laws of podcasting.
Is it against the laws? I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Step back, Davis. The new boss has arrived. That's what No, yeah, it is not onerous at all. The platform's fine. That just works. That's really good. It's kind of a bit zoomy. It's got whiteboards and things, so it's all very familiar. That's easy peasy. The tutoring, I interact through the I think the liaison person or something, and basically I've been tutoring maths and physics, and you get the message basically from the teacher saying, can you have a look at these areas here? And in terms of the actual kind of prep, I'm not going to lie, I don't do vast amounts because the resources are so good that you can kind of work through them together. And actually one of the things I've really learned is that a lot of it's about giving the student the confidence to realize that they can go through those resources and understand them. I don't just sit there and say, read it. We talk it through and ask questions. But I certainly noticed my last candidate who did brilliantly, got a 9, very proud of that. But that by the end of it, they were sort of saying, shush, shush, I'm reading it. But that's a huge step forward for people perhaps from less academic backgrounds, where realizing I can work this, I can self-start. There's lots of stuff like that, and it is fulfilling. The guy who got a 9, but not give any names, for safeguarding reasons. But the guy who got a 9, if he hadn't got a 9, it would have been my fault that he hadn't got a 9 because he was so good. But having said that, it was still very good, and I was challenged a little bit, as in scientifically there, because his maths was so ridiculous. So I had to actually keep on my toes. This is GCSE, which is quite worrying. So he's going to go far. It's not difficult. We've been pushing it a bit through the profession for a while, and we haven't got a massive uptake. And I don't know whether it's worried that we won't do a great job at the teaching part. Jess, I don't know if that's a common concern you hear.
It definitely is. For some people, it's been a long time since they were in school themselves, and some people we speak to weren't educated in the UK, so that's another side of things. But I don't know if this will make your listeners feel any better, but we work with people pretty much. I think we have a few volunteers who are in their 80s, believe it or not. So they're as far away as you can imagine, really, without being too offensive to the 80-year-olds, to actually being at GCSE themselves, and the curriculum has changed massively. So we do really support you to get the kind of skills and to bring up your knowledge of that particular base. As you said, Gwilym, you've got loads of resources online. But I do think that the concern of, am I going to be good enough? There's a young person sat on the other side of the screen who is basically needing me to be able to support them to bring out their aspirations, their grades, all of those bits and pieces. So we do have some various elements that can help alongside the resources and webinars online. We have university access officers, which, as I say, they're based in the school and they're part of our programme. And they can do drop-ins on calls to give you a bit of advice and some sort of feedback if people feel like they need that to be able to push forward. And I think those things can really help bring up people's confidence. But certainly, and I don't know if you feel this way, Gwilym, but the more you do it, the more you feel comfortable with the tutorials, the more you understand what you need to do in order to plan and to successfully deliver them.
Yeah, it's got easier. And I've done maths twice and physics twice now, so it's the syllabus is all coming back. And the basic laws of nature haven't changed much, Lee. The good news.
Have they not?
That is good news.
No,
I never learnt them, so it wouldn't make much of a difference to me. So speaking of which, I've got a question, if I can chip in. So we've talked about kind of science, tech, maths, but I'm sat here, obviously, that's not my background, not at all. And I'm thinking, something probably I would love to be involved in because I do like to give back where I can. What do people need qualifications-wise, first of all, to even be considered to volunteer?
So first and foremost, you absolutely need to have a degree or working towards one. The degree itself doesn't need to be in the subject that you're tutoring in. I think that's quite important to say to people if they are interested in tutoring at GCSE. At A-level, that can be different, but certainly at the moment, we're looking very much from a GCSE perspective. So, for example, I did a history degree and a history A-level, so I could tutor both at A-level and at GCSE and history. So there may be some people who are thinking, like you say, Lee, that I really love doing English. I didn't do it at degree level. I did say economics, but I love doing English at A-level. You can absolutely still apply with being able to tutor at, doing English with a young person. So that's the way to think about it, really, is that you have to have a qualification above what the young person is studying, and everything else as far as confidence and the lesson plans and other bits that you might need in order to go in and feel confident, we will support you to be able to access.
Oh, okay. Where do we go next, Gwilym?
Two interesting things, actually. First of all, you have to remind me there's two. First one, I went along to an event you guys had recently because I was interested to find out a bit more. And I bumped into a teacher from Eton. And that was one of the more surprising things. I was thinking, does Eton really need access project support? But he told me really interestingly that Eton, for example, has got a whole bunch of support schools outside the famous ones where they're doing quite a lot of work to kind of spread their goodwill, as it were. That was interesting to learn. I guess you've got quite a lot of that.
Yes, funnily enough, that specific teacher at Eton is someone I used to work with quite well. It's funny in a small world that you live in, when you were sort of move in this particular environment. But yes, I know them well. It's definitely, I think, for lots of schools that are perhaps the schools that you wouldn't traditionally associate with something like the Access Project. There's a lot of those type of schools that are thinking, how do we connect with the reality of a lot of the world that young people live in? And as we sort of touched on, I think, at the top of this podcast, now is more important than ever, really, to help young people to be able to get the grades that they need to be able to move forward. I used to work at NCS, which is National Citizen Service. And one of the things we came across more than anything is young people didn't have optimism about their future because of COVID. And more so now, the cost of living crisis, a lot of young people are taking the decision to not go into further education and get a job because they're worried about the basics of life. How do I afford to be able to fill up my car if I've got a car? How do I pay electric? How do I basically live a life? And so university doesn't always fit into that. So, the ability of having tutors who have that aspiration and have done it, have been there, got the degree, got an amazing career out of it, I think can be a really great role model for these young people about going through that next step and making those career options a possibility for themselves.
And that actually kind of brings me to the second one, actually, conveniently, because I was about to forget it, which is the mentoring aspect as well. And again, I was discussing that when I met some of your colleagues. And I think that's probably changed a little bit because I'm post-lockdown generation access project. So I've only ever done it on Zoom. And that makes it, frankly, it seems to make perfect sense and certainly suits my kind of working life much better. Before that, I think it was a lot more real world stuff. And so I wonder whether I'm not doing enough mentoring through doing it online, as opposed to kind of the reality when they would come to your office back in the day and kind of actually get that aspirational aspect as well.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think there is definitely a place for face-to-face because you do get a lot more of a sense of that person, I think, when you're in front of them. But we find that the reason online works on the whole is because everybody has such busy lives, and it feels like the world has just sped up since coming back from COVID. So I think it's helped people to be able to create that flexibility to do the tutoring in an hour that suits them, and all you need is internet access and a laptop. So although I think there is an aspect where you'd say, okay, you don't get that face-to-face in the way that you might have done, I think it brings more people from different parts of the country to be able to do this particular volunteering opportunity. That being said, we do have university access officers within the schools that offer a lot of mentoring themselves and help them with things like UCAS applications. So there's a combination of the academic side of things, which we get a lot more from the tutors. And we have the mentoring within the school, which brings up their confidence, their aspirations, and also things we do more now, things such as university trips, which obviously COVID time we couldn't do, which helps the young people to see what universities actually look like and how they operate, and can take a little bit of the kind of fear out of what it's like to go to those universities. So it's definitely those kind of dual combination that can make the difference to that young person's next steps and next choices.
And I mean, in terms of the successes, again, one of the people I met at the event was one of your alumni who's now at Oxford, and there's obviously all of their expectations have changed completely. So I imagine you've got plenty of lovely success stories coming through.
We do, and we're very lucky to get a lot of case studies from young people who really enjoy working with us at the Access Project. Just out of 100, I'll give you a little bit of impact here, which might be useful for people. So 93 out of 100 applied to a top university whilst working with us. This is 22-23 stats. 82 out of 100 received a top uni acceptance, and 53 out of 100 were placed at a top uni. 41% of our students achieved A, B, B or higher as well at A level. So you can see that the numbers that we're working with, so many of them really believe in themselves so much more. Like you mentioned, Gwilym, 93 out of 100 applying to a top university. From the cohort of young people we're talking about, 1,900 of them, 91% of them being at disadvantage of some sort. There's a huge number of young people that are believing themselves and also accessing some super selective universities, including Oxford, and also getting in. So I think because we're now in that sort of second phase, I think, as an organisation, we've moved past 15 years, we're getting to see some of the fruits of that labour of the young people coming back and saying, I'm a doctor now. I know there was someone at the event who is now a doctor, and they have praised the university, the Access Project and their tutor to be able to get there and to do that. So if we're seeing more of those kind of case studies coming back, but we're getting such strong feedback from young people that the combination of what we do is helping them to be able to go to those top unis and apply for those top careers.
And you begin to realise that part of the benefit of privilege, shall we say, is that I was lucky. I knew lots of interesting jobs I could go into. I knew what to do with a science degree, and from my background, the options are open to me from secondary school, well, admittedly playing football was one of them, but I was rubbish at that, so I had to rethink. But job-wise, things I kind of knew what I might do. I've noticed with some of the candidates I've been talking to, they really want to do well academically, but then they don't know what to do with it. And because, again, that's not been something that's been very apparent to them. So that's been an area where I felt that there's help to be given, isn't it? There's more options than you might think.
Oh yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I was the same. My dad sells cars for a living. My mum works for the NHS. I had absolutely no idea what I could do outside of go to university. And once you're there, you're having, in my experience, such a great time. What do you do next? It's really difficult to see the breadth of jobs out there. And I think with your sort of 500 strong cohort of patent attorneys, there's so much experience there of different career paths, different enjoyment, different passions, different experiences that you can bring to being a tutor, and opening the young person's eyes and aspirations to different types of careers that they wouldn't have even necessarily know existed, let alone something that they'd be working towards. I think it's really important, and it's certainly, as an organisation, we're working towards creating more opportunities where young people can see the type of careers out there by doing sort of workshops with some of the organisations we work with, and various sort of other sort of skill set sessions, so that they can see that if you work, an example, in an office for a legal company, it's not necessarily that you're going to be a lawyer. You could do a lot of different types of jobs within that legal firm. And that is, I think, a really important thing for a lot of young people, not just the young people I think that we work with, but young people in general, because I think it feels like jobs are just expanding constantly, and there's a new job every week popping up that you might not have heard of a week ago.
Lee, were you going to say something? You came off mute, but it might be because you're just coughing.
I just finished my coughing fit, so I just came off mute to be polite.
Oh, that's good of you to do that. Is that all that salt you inhaled?
Quite possibly, or it's just the airplanes don't go well with me. It's just,
or is it because you licked the walls in a mine? Might it be that? I seem to have caught something from the aeroplane. Not because everyone who walked down the stairs licked the same bit of. That's disgusting.
I was right at the end of a queue of about 70 people as well. So back on the podcast. Can I ask a question? I was going to ask a question. It's very kind of you to notice that I was about to speak, Gwilym. Thank you very much. When's the optimum time for someone to become involved with the young person, Jess? When should, for this to really work well, when does that relationship start?
So ideally for us, it's the start of the academic year, which is September. But I realise, obviously, this podcast we're creating is in November right now. So don't be put off if you're listening and thinking this sounds like something you would like to do, but we're in November and the academic year has started in September. You can still apply, and there is an opportunity to be matched with a young person up until around Christmas time. Obviously, I know we're quite close to that date right now. But if you do apply right now and it's something you would like to do, there are various points within the year where, for example, tutors they could move and they could decide that this isn't an opportunity they need to continue with, or work changes. There are various reasons that obviously people can't volunteer anymore. And in which case we might contact and say, there is an opportunity for you to be matched with this young person tutoring maths. Would you like to do it? But ultimately, ideally, if you were thinking you would like to have the whole academic year with a young person, that's September to July, we would definitely recommend people to apply summertime, effectively. So June, July, August, so we can get you trained and ready for the the autumn term.
You mentioned just 500 patent attorneys. It's not 500. Lee, how many? What have you
got? So our total membership, 4,700-ish. Just under 3,000 of those are our qualified patent attorney members. We've also got 1,200 or so trainees, student members, but trainees for us, Jess, are people that have already been through extensive university education. So they've already got at least a bachelor's degree, probably a master's degree. 20% or so have got a PhD. So our trainees are already highly qualified before they do the patent attorney bit. And then we've got the 500 or so IP paralegal members alongside that, and obviously they're generally highly qualified, but not in the technical way that a patent attorney might be. So so I mean, potentially we've got almost 5,000 people that would be able to, and me, I'd be interested in doing this. I'm gonna go away and have a think. I'm
so sorry for undercutting you quite so badly. Then 500 plus to 5,000 is quite a jump.
There is an irony, well, not an irony. There's something that occurred to me really quite recently, which is that across Europe, there's about 15,000 attorneys. There's also probably about 7. There's about 7,000 or 8,000 examiners, I'm going to guess, as well.
Yeah.
So that means that the patent system has taken 25,000 scientists out of the system, if you will. And so I'm not going to suggest we also tap into Europe, but more, it's interesting how what we've done with all the scientists, it's a very British thing, turn it into a service industry. So I think there's a lot of Brits available to give a bit back. Lee, how can we get our esteemed colleagues into this? How can we get them going apart from podcasts? What do we do?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Obviously, the podcast is one way of telling the story. That helps us get the message out there. But I think maybe this is something we ought to drop into the likes of regional events. So when we have those smaller meetings with members around the country, perhaps it's something we could do there. Perhaps the Access Project and others could come along, have a little kind of stand, pop it up, chat to people directly, and try and reel them in that way. And just word of mouth, mate. I think, you speaking to people, telling people how amazing it is. Yeah, you're a massive role model, aren't you, for patent attorneys? So that would work.
When you describe someone as a model, it means a small, imperfect replica of the real thing, Lee.
You're such a patent attorney, mate. You're such a patent
So specific.
You can't, Jess, you can't have a conversation with them without them sort of absolutely interrogating the meaning of words down to the nth degree.
You know what, I can believe it. But from the Access Project point of view, obviously always happy to come along to any sort of event to talk about what we do and how we do it. We often deliver information sessions for groups of people where we talk about pretty much everything I've just said, but we do it in a nice kind of fancy slide deck way, so you have something visually to look at as well. We also have flyers and posts and all sorts of things where people can look a little bit more, if you're more of a visual person, about the opportunity and how you get involved.
Cool.
And how many tutors have you got at the moment, Jess, out of interest?
We have over 1,000 tutors. So yeah, strong cohort of people, and getting more every day, which is definitely what we need in order to fit that 1,900 students. But what I should say, and I mean, Gwilym is definitely an advocate for this, is we get a lot of people who will tutor and will give years of their time because they get so into it, and they really engage with what we do, which is amazing and obviously what we want. So we have a high level of retention, which is lovely. So if if it's something that people are interested in doing, it tends to be an opportunity that people stick at, which is a definite positive of doing something like this kind of work.
I mean, we take on, how many students a year do we take on, Lee?
Sort of 200-ish, maybe.
Okay, so if we had 1/8 or something, I can't do the math, the 20th of our numbers, actually.
You can't do the maths in your tutoring.
I know it's pathetic, isn't it? I've got to work to that. 1/200th of our cohort. No, whatever, a large number. If we tutored 200 underprivileged or kind of, students from different backgrounds a year, then we could basically totally revolutionize the intake for the profession.
Yeah.
And we've got, with 4,000 people available, that is 1 in 20. I was right.
And the other thing is, it does fit quite nicely into the corporate social responsibility agenda, doesn't it? So firms themselves, we've talked about it as being an individual thing at the moment. This is something that you choose to do because you're passionate about it as an individual. But actually, we could maybe tie this into things like managing partners meetings, Gwilym, and try and get them to think about it from a firm's perspective.
I'd love that. I mean, final plug from me is, it's actually I'm not always that clear what good things I'm doing for society, but I can actually point to one thing that's quite difficult to disagree with. It's nice. I've got it in my back pocket for emergencies in difficult conversations, which is quite good. I had one more question for Jess, because I think that's been kind of, we covered it really, really well there, which is just, how did you get into this? What drives you to do all these lovely things?
It's a really difficult one. I think to an extent I felt very privileged. I have come from a background of a relative comfort, I would say. My family were, I guess relatively well off to an extent, and I felt really lucky. And I think when I went to university, I met lots of people who shouldn't have basically come from my school and be there. I looked around and I thought, how can I know these people? This doesn't feel right. And so when I left university, I went to work for a charity that was helping schools to find governors effectively from different kind of backgrounds. And it really started my passion to think, how can we make the education system a little bit fairer? Because as much as, I am a product of a lot of it, I feel it's something about it didn't look or feel right. And certainly when I dove a little bit more into the sort of data and working with some schools across London who needed support to move out of sort of inadequate to move to good and outstanding, being a part of that, I think, is a really great way to use your time and, you know, use your ambition and to make the world a bit of a fairer place. And it is a sort of slightly weird one in a sense, because I don't know if I should be that person because I didn't come from that background, but it feels like you have to be part of the change to be able to look around and go, okay, yeah, the world is a little bit fairer, a little bit more equal. And it's something that it's just put me in all of my roles and all of my jobs. It's something that I've kept as a value in applying for opportunities and seeing that through, I guess.
Well, it's been lovely of you to come on and share your experience, Jess, but also talk to us about the way the project works, and hopefully this will inspire more of our members to become involved. And I think Gwilym and I have got a little takeaway from this, and that's that we need to plug this into other SEPA activities, regional events, managing partners meeting. Just, it doesn't need to be much, 5-10 minutes, little chat about it, and to try and inspire people to do the same. But one thing we do on the podcast is we do close with a question that's it should be a bit related, but it can be a bit tangential. It's not one of my most exciting ones, Gwilym. I can see you getting ready. You've set up and you're.
Should I be nervous? Should I be nervous now?
Yes, you should. Yes,
you should be nervous because Gwilym gets to have a go at it first, so that gives you time to think about it. It's really, this isn't a taxi one, because I think I should be sticking with school subjects and the like, so that's where I'm going. I'm going to school subjects. I'm just interested to know, Gwilym, what was your best school subject and what was your worst school subject, and why was it your worst?
Oh, sport's easy. I was worst is sport.
Really?
I was terrible at it. They put me on volleyball, which was just for people who basically couldn't do anything like that. And I wasn't all bad. I could actually serve at volleyball. The funky overarm serve. For some reason, that's the only thing I could do. But because no one could return it, we just used to serve 15 times, and then we.
Did they lower the net for you? Was it like on a table tennis table?
Oh, and it was a ping pong ball. And it was actually on the Sabutio table is how we did that. And then my best. I was quite geeky. So my best. I was just a geek. So the maths and the physics did actually. O level and A level made sense. Struggled a bit, got a bit difficult at degree level. Could do it. But yeah, that was my best and worst.
Go on then, Jess. How about you?
I hate to say that I agree on the worst side of things. I was terrible at sport, and it's one of my great regrets that I didn't try a little bit harder. I used to be one of those people whenever sports would come around where I would either stand the furthest away from whatever was happening, whether it was football in the corner where no one would kick, or anything I would try and keep away, or run the slowest I possibly could on the 800 meters so that they would call it quits before I finished. So I was not a great sportswoman. Best was history. I loved history. I love learning anything about history and still do. If there's a period drama on TV or any kind of book related to the English Civil War, I will look at it, read it, indulge on anything to do with history. So those are my two.
Oh, amazing. So me, just so Gwilym doesn't have to freeze again trying to ask me a question.
Thank you.
I hated school with a passion. So I hated every subject at school, but not because of the subject, but school and me just didn't get on. So I fell out of school at 15 before I'd taken I had a mix of, I was in that age group where CSEs were coming in. I think it was the first year they were in. So I was taking a mix of O-levels and CSEs. I did go back and take them. I went back to take them, but I actually left school early to go and work on a building site because I just couldn't take the lessons anymore. So I didn't do terribly well at school. Stumbled out. I just about scraped a maths and an English O level, and I got a German CSE. And those are my school qualifications. I've done considerably better since then, but yeah. And it wasn't because I wasn't an intelligent person. It was just because school switched me off. So I hated every subject except, for some reason, German. I loved German. And there was no reason for me to love it except my mum and dad used to have these EFL, English as a Foreign Language students who would come over, and I think because we needed the money, we would me and my brother would always be confined to the smallest room in the house so that we could have a couple of foreign exchange students come and stay with us. I think because it brought in a bit of extra cash into the sort of like the family kitty, and very often they were Germans, so I got the opportunity, I guess, to use it. So I liked learning it. That's me.
And you Germans come up once or twice actually on the podcast, so it's good to have it reinforced. Lee, not at any point during this podcast mentioned plumbing. Are you all right?
Oh, come on, I nearly managed to make it through a whole one without mentioning plumbing, and you did it instead. So, yeah, Jess, if you've got any students that do desperately need help with their plumbing lessons, then I'm your man.
Funnily enough, that's not come up, but you never know. You never know. There's always a first.
There is a lot of maths and science in plumbing, I will hasten to add, and it's all relatable.
I'm sure.
Thank you for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Gwilym, always good to see you, mate. I think I'm catching up with you in real life later on this week. We have a book launch to go to, don't we, on Thursday?
Oh yeah, and then pizza.
And then pizza, yeah. That's I don't eat pizza, so I'll just scrape the topping off.
Which bit do you eat? The topping or the pizza?
No, just the topping. The bottom's all carbs, mate. Don't do carbs.
Oh, it's really healthy on top. Oh, it's so healthy.
We probably need to lose all this bit, not least because it dates the podcast, because by the time it goes out, that Thursday's gone. Let's call it a day, shall we?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Cheers, Jess. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely chatting to you both.